What is going on, wonderful people? I hope y'all are doing well. I just got off another sales call with a startup software company who, like most that I'm running into, which is why I'm making this video, are asking me more so on how the bigger picture of the process looks and what they should do at their stage as far as like marketing, and then what job titles are doing what to do sales, and after sales, like how does that look, and so on and so forth. They're not. I'm talking to a lot of people who don't know what CSMs are, or BDRs, or SDRs, or AEs, upsells, downsells, so on and so forth. So I put together a little diagram that will hopefully help answer all of these questions for a lot of you guys that are asking me. That way, you have a better understanding of what exactly front to back end, more so on the marketing side on the front end, more so sales side. Obviously, there's more outbound stuff related that can be tailored into this. But this is more so like the framework that I personally believe in as far as the B2B buying era that we're in, as far as 2022. Still a huge believer in outbound, don't get me wrong. Coming from a sales background and being an SDR and account executive, it's super important. But in today's day and age where marketing does a lot of the selling, if it's done correctly, that's more so what I have this built out. So in a bigger picture, I'm going to try to keep this really short. Bigger picture, there's a lot of different ways to get people, the bigger picture, to book in on the calendar, right? So you have all kinds of distribution channels, so on and so forth. So you have lead magnets, right? Whether that's a white paper, an ebook, something of that nature, where someone is in exchange giving you an email. Now, in today's era, I personally believe that is not someone who has shown enough intent to reach out. I'm very big in creating demand. So educating your market on the problem that you solve, and basically just being a professor to them. And in doing so, you're positioning yourself as an authority in your specific vertical. And if you do that enough and you tell people what you do, how you do it, what problem you solve, how to solve that specific problem different ways, you then over time look like the authority, right? And in doing so, what happens is people make the buying decision when they want to nowadays, right? They have YouTube to do software reviews, or they'll whatever it is, right? They can do all the 90% of the research on their own end. Where it's Amazon, you can go look at the reviews, or what are people saying about this product, right? Whereas back in the day, in order to get information, you had to talk to a sales rep. Surprise, you're on a sales call, right? Now you can get closed. But because people are able to make most of the buyer's journey process themselves, we need to make sure that we're being relevant and staying in front of their face with the correct content. So when the buying decision comes to them top of mind, you're who they think of first, because you've been the one educating them, nurturing them, and now you're the authority for that specific problem, right? So again, there's a lot of different ways you can do white papers and ebooks. You can run an ebook where it's a lead form, and you can create a webhook that sends it to maybe your Slack or Discord channel, and then adds webhook that's going to add it to your email marketing campaign, webhook that's going to create it as a contact in your CRM, so on and so forth. And that way you have that information, and you can then nurture them, whether it's through email, whether it's an SDR who's going to end up reaching out to them, whatever the case, right? And so there's a multitude of different ways you can do that. The idea is once you're further along in your life cycle, actually, I mean, you can do this pretty early as well. I mean, I was always told by my mentor, you can't help everyone, right? So figure out the people you can help, and if it's a fit, do your best to make sure you can help them, and instill the belief that you can. So in most cases, not all the time, like there's a lot of clients we have right now where we're not embedding an application form, but there are some, depending on the space they're in. And so we want to get people to apply to see if they're in a position, right, to get assistance from us. We do not want our salespeople jumping on every single call that's possible. That's how you piss your sales guys off. You're just wasting their time. You're giving up other true opportunities for them to get on calls with actual qualified people. And if they're spending time taking calls with unqualified people, well, now they're missing out on chances to hit their KPIs and their quota, which is why the sales department has the highest churn rate out of any department within most businesses, especially in the software space. So on that note, I want to come down here real quick. I get asked this a lot, right? People don't know, like I just keep getting people like, oh, I need a sales guy, right? Or I need this guy, but they don't even know the specific role that they should be going and posting on LinkedIn or trying to hire for that specific role, what the average salary is for that role, so on and so forth. So people have different ways of interpreting an SDR and contrary BDR. Some people really split those up. Some people say SDRs they take inbound. Some people say BDRs take inbound. To make it very simplistic, I just keep them cohesive. They're almost the exact same things, right? You got SDR, which stands for Sales Development Representative. You got a BDR, Business Development Representative. In most cases, they're the exact same thing. When you get into the higher tier, like SMB, mid-market, or enterprise-based, most of the time, your SDRs are called BDRs. Again, every organization is different. There's a lot of organizations that have these interpreted different ways. From what I've seen, they're called BDRs when they're going after larger average annual contract deals, right? Where SDRs, it could be someone helping sell a $5,000 thing rather than a $500,000 thing. Again, everyone has their own different interpretation. For inbound, I always split the leads and I always split the pipelines from outbound to inbound, right? Because they're going to convert higher. Some people's higher intent being inbound, whereas in outbound, they are a cold audience. They just might be interested in whatever messaging that you shot over to them. So I just call them appointment setters, right? And I dedicate the appointment setters to the inbound pipeline, who will get compensated differently than an SDR and BDR, right? On that same note, again, some people will call the appointment setters SDRs and BDR just be outbound. Some people call appointment setters BDRs and SDR just outbound. It's all really different, but the general understanding is that you have SDRs and BDRs on the front end of the sale, trying to develop that sale and push it along in the sales cycle. Okay? So moving on, you have an account executive. These are your closers, right? These are the people who get paid the big bucks. Usually the average compensation is usually starting off like $50,000 to $65,000 a year with OTE, depending on the organization, like 100 to 250, which is really depending, and it can go way higher. I mean, I know AEs who are making, close to $500,000 a year, right? But those are your closers. So in most cases, you have an account executive who usually has 2 SDRs/BDRs. So he has a team of 2, sometimes more, right? And they are a unit. They work together. They have accounts they're going after in a specific territory for a specific quarter, and they're all aligned. And the SDR and BDR is trying to help them develop the sales and get people to show intent for the AE to hopefully get on a call enough to push them over the deal. And again, some sales cycles, depending on what market you're in, can be 45 days, could be seven days. There's some that could be a year, some 24 months, right? So it really depends. But just know the AE is the closer. In some organizations, you don't see this too often. You will see sales engineers/sales consultants. So there's one company called RealPage, which they sell like real estate software to project managers, right? And I know this because not only did I have one of my best friends who got hired there, and he kind of told me how exactly the framework looks. But there are a handful of other software companies that do this. Sometimes, most times, the AE is going to be the one giving the demo of the software, right? Sometimes, depending on how flushed out the organization is, people may take an AE will do a first call, a sales engineer/sales consultant will do a demo on the second call, right? with an AE potentially. And then again, because the sales cycles can be so long, an AE will then follow up with the process afterwards. And in most cases, the sales engineer is taking that demo call, maybe because the demo is robust, right? I mean, you think of Salesforce, for example. That is a tedious and very tumultuous software, right? There's so many complexities within that software. I don't know how they have it set up, but I would assume they have some variation of a sales consultant, sales engineer on that call giving demos. So that should depict a better picture. After that, client success. These are the people who are going to ensure that everyone is happy from the time they pay you and that they're getting caught up to speed with the software that they just potentially spent $50,000 to $100,000 plus on, right? Very important people. Those are a lot of people I talk to really overlook this role. And personally, I think getting more from your current customer list is most times overlooked. So many people are so worried about acquiring a lot of customers on the front end rather than upselling the current customers that they have who already know, like, and trust them. And so I want to say most that I talk to neglect them. They just don't emphasize this role. And I always come in and say, like, you really need to emphasize this role. Keep your customers who took the initiative to take the next step forward with you. Just keep them happy, right? And then on the back end of all this, you have account managers. So these are the people similar to client success, are making sure that the current roster is happy. They're usually dedicated again to a specific territory, to a specific number of counts, depending on the organization, right? It could vary. They are the ones who do the upsells or downsells when it comes to renewal time. In most cases, not all the time, but most cases, they're the ones who are working the sale on the back end. They get paid similar to an AE. I wouldn't say as much, right? The starting salary is usually between 40 to 50 plus your OTE, which could be, 70 to 100. It could be more, just again, depends on the size of the organization. But yeah, those are the ones on the back end. So on the front end of marketing, I always tell people in the starting cycle, which distribution channel should you start off using? And the one that you choose is really indicative of where you think your audience is hanging out. I wouldn't spread yourself too thin at the beginning and try to do everything. Same thing with the marketing term. If you speak to everyone, you speak to no one, right? I would definitely pick 2 channels that you're really going to prioritize. You could use other. I'm not saying you can't, just depending on your budget and how much time you have readily available to yourself. And most times I'd say pick 1 or 2, depending on where your audience is hanging out on. Get them into your funnel. And the idea is to, once they land, take your lead magnet and land on your application form. You have pixels on all of these stages, right? Every single one of these stages. So as they're going through the funnel, if they don't complete a step, we're hitting them with retargeting ads. Basically just giving them, again, case studies, testimonials, talking about, hey, I saw you didn't do X, Y, and Z. Maybe it's because of this, and you're answering the FAQs, right? You get that point. And if not, hop on a call. I'll walk you through all that. The bigger picture about all of this is we want to get them onto, again, from the application, if we think they're fit, get them onto a qualifying call. A lot of people call this a discovery call, an introduction call, strategy session, whatever it is, right? Get them onto a call to figure out if there's a dire need for a pain that they have that you can solve immediately, right? We want to help people. If they're fit, let's figure out the people that we know we can help and they want help right now. And if so, do a good enough job on the front end to ensure that we can get them set up on a demo call, right? And so on and so forth. I don't want to make this too drawn out. After the demo, usually the proposal's sent out. They don't take you up on that. You should have a downsell. In most cases, what you can do is start off with, if you got to pitch a downsell, pitch it as like an accelerator program. Take out some features, maybe take out the consulting part of it, which is what I see a lot of people do. When I was at For Marketer, the main thing they got with us is like they got a year of consulting from us. Whereas if they Didn't want that. Then that was a downsell. And then what happens is when you get them in your ecosystem, now they have built trust with you, and now you can upsell them into your an ascension package, right? Purchase, onboarding form, redirect the kickoff call. Some people have all this set up differently. I am very big on mitigating buyer's remorse. So like have a system drawn out on the back end. And this could really be drawn out more. This is very simple. I mean, you should see mine. I should probably make one of how mine is with ClickUp, Notion, so on and so forth. But like bring them into a dedicated Slack channel. Don't just communicate with them over email. Like really make it feel like they are now an extension of your team or vice versa, right? The big thing here, and what I always mention to people, the idea is to help your guys close, right? You got to remember the sales department has the highest churn rate. How can we pre-sell people before they're even being pitched? And this is something called the 7-hour rule by Dan Kennedy. I should have had this pulled up. Let me see if it'll pull up. No, it's fine though. I'll explain it. What happens is when someone books in on your calendar, on that confirmation page, we have a pixel set up, right? So now their call is in 5 days, okay? The call is in 5 days. When they go off of that confirmation page and they go on Facebook, boom, they're getting hit with a retargeting ad talking about the call that they're getting on in 5 days, what they're gonna learn, what they're gonna get, what you do, why you do it, who you've helped, how you've helped them, the issue that they're facing, how you could solve it. Just talking about the call that they're gonna get on in 5 days, right? And just basically answering all of their concerns prior to them even being on the call. Boom, they're getting off Facebook. They go over to Instagram, retargeting ad, talking specifically about the call they're going to get on, who you are, what you do, case studies, testimonials, why you should listen to us, who we've helped, just social proof, right? Just answering all their questions. And so the idea is when they show up to that call with whomever, it's like, dude, I know who you are. I know what you do. I've seen you everywhere. I don't know how. Don't even got to sell me. I'm already bought in. Here's my credit card. Right? That's the idea. This is what a lot of companies neglect. Have a pixel set up for the people who confirm. Have them do some homework. And then just retarget them, specifically talking about the call they're going to get on. So they're almost pre-sold. And so I say that to say the 7-hour rule. Dan Kennedy mentioned something called the 7-hour rule, where in today's B2B buying space, the end consumer needs around 7 hours worth of content consumed before they're trustworthy enough to make a buying decision into what you have to offer them, right? So what we tried to do on the front end is like, how can we get them to consume 7 hours worth of content, right? In most cases, if the call's in 5 days, we can't get them to consume 7 hours worth of content, but we can do our due diligence to make sure that they're getting enough of us and answering most of their objections that they would have or questions they would have prior, right? And so when they're there on the call, again, like I said, they're pre-sold. So this is longer than I wanted. I hope this makes sense. Again, a lot of people keep asking, like, how should I structure the process? Like, well, who do I need to hire? I heard of SDR. What is an SDR? An account executive. Is that a sales guy? Like, I keep hearing that stuff, right? Most people do know it, but I have ran into a lot of instances where people don't. So for those of you guys who did not know, I hope that answered a lot of y'all's questions. And yeah, if you need anything, reach out to me.